So they might go into work, they might go through the motions. Within themselves, they'll know something's wrong, but from the external looking in, it might look like they're hitting their targets, closing deals, doing all of the things.
8 out of 10 workers are already at a risk of burnout, and burnout peaks around age 25.
You can optimize your sleep, you can change your nutrition, you can go and do a high rocks to give you meaning. But if underneath it's your purpose and your understanding of who you are that is lacking, where everyone started to really be like, oh, like, you're doing really well now. Like, I had a flat, I had a good group of friends. I got out of so over time it was this downward spiral of me just completely losing myself.
I essentially feel like what I am today is a manufactured version of myself that society needed me to do.
At a point where they're either feeling stuck or like they've plateaued in some area of their life, whether that's work, whether that's stage of life, and they're questioning things without having really any direction of where to go. There is something called the physiological sigh. So this is where I was going on holiday all of the time. Like, it looked like I was really winning at life.
Lucy, welcome to While She Builds.
Hi, very excited to be here.
I know that you've been doing a lot of work in the space of helping other people untap their potential, untap what it means to be aligned from within. But we're going to tap into all of that in the episode that we have in the minutes coming for the guests. But help me understand one thing that I've been hearing about, especially in the past few months with artificial intelligence, or AI as we call it, come along. Many people are burning out and they think that it's because of work. And they think that they're working too hard or too much. But I feel like you're going to push me back with that. So tell me a little bit more. What is burnout for you? Or rather, what is burnout?
So burnout is when our nervous system goes into a space of dysregulation and we're not able to bring ourselves back to a state of where we can regulate our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. And for different people, it shows up in different ways. And I think this is the most missed part of burnout, because burnout isn't just being tired, being overworked. It can show up differently in different people and it will have different symptoms. So there's 3 ways that I like to describe it. Well, 3 symptoms that I like to say that you can have. One is when you're just, like you said, completely exhausted. The things that you used to enjoy doing, you just don't have the energy for anymore. You're sleeping way more than you should. And it doesn't matter how much sleep you have, you're never waking up energized. The other one is feelings of hopelessness, feelings of negativity. So things that you used to thrive at, things that you used to really enjoy the challenge at, now feel so overwhelming, and your capacity to do the tasks and hold the stress then becomes very much reduced. And the third one, which I think is the most missed, is people go into autopilot. So when we think of this idea of capacity, they just start operating at a level of capacity that they can just breeze through. And for some people, this is where it's missed out, especially with high achievers. Their ability to hold capacity is already quite high, but it means that it stops them from being able to take the next level. So they might go into work, they might go through the motions. Within themselves, they'll know something's wrong, but from the external looking in, it might look like they're hitting their targets, closing deals, doing all of the things, but they're not able to grow from that because actually they're just running on autopilot, which will continually be a downward spiral. Their capacity will start to drop, but it won't be as obvious as the other ones. And the pattern with all of these is you're in a frozen state. So you're not able to come up and down, and you're not able to re-energize yourself. And that's where the things like inflammation and where you might get health issues and autoimmune diseases, this is where these come in, because you're not coming back to rest and digest, where you're able to heal, where you're able to come back to this sense of connection, and where the place of creativity and healing really is.
That's very interesting how you mention that in 3 simple ways. And when you were speaking about how burnout truly feels inside, I was reflecting, when did I feel this? And sometimes I feel that, am I burned out too much? Because I go through these symptoms often. Sometimes I attune it to a lack of sleep. Sometimes I attune it to being tired. So the question that I will have for you as a follow-up is, how do I know that that's a burnout versus I'm just tired, I've not rested well, probably some of the things in my usual day-to-day routine is what's holding me back? How do I know the difference between the two?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think, you know, if you've had a lack of sleep and you're tired, you can probably say, okay, I've had little sleep, or I have, with sleep, it's not usually one bad sleep, but over the course of maybe 2 or 3 weeks, you've started having 2 hours less sleep every night, and that's built up to make you feel tired. But it's when you're sleeping a lot and you're still not feeling energized, when you're eating right and you're still not feeling better immediately, that underpins another layer which says, okay, maybe this is on the nervous system level, that I'm constantly running on this state of fight or flight, which then goes into freeze or shut down. And it's in this shutdown phase. So if you think of the nervous system a bit like a curve like this, and so when we enter fight or flight, we start to go on this upwards curve. And this is actually good. If we didn't have stress, we wouldn't be able to do the things that we wanted to do, achieve the things. I think when people talk about, oh, I'm stressed, no, that can be a really good thing. The most important thing is, how can we utilize that energy, utilize that stress to pull us into something and be like, yes, I can do this. But then once we've done that, be able to come back down, back into rest and digest. And the way that I talk about this is, when we were cavemen, you would run away from the tiger, or you would go and hunt the animal. But you wouldn't stay there in that, I'm going to go and hunt the animal. You would go back to your tribe. You would have a feast. You would rest. You would have joyous moments with your family, and you would sleep, and you would come back down. And even throughout history, even in the medieval times, the Victorian times, people really made space for this time to rest and have connection with other people in their tribe or community. In today's world, we have the problem of social media. We bring our work back with us. It's on our phones all of the time. And so, yes, we might technically be in a different environment, which is meant to cue rest. But if our brains are constantly seeing emails or looking at that deadline or comparing yourself to someone on social media, your nervous system is actually still in that state of dysregulation. And if you don't understand how that shows up in you and the tools that you need to bring it back down, if you stay there for too long, that's when this bell curve goes from I can to I can't. And that's when we start to get this shutdown, and the shutdown is where we see burnout. And that's where it becomes harder to just rest and come back, because you're almost stuck there. So we need to have the practices to almost kick that into action to bring that back down.
Coming back to practices, and you associated this of what happened before our generation was born. I came across an analogy that you used on your Instagram, which I want to reference here for the entire audience listening to this. And it's the flower analogy. And you explained it so beautifully, I just have to mention it. You mentioned about how when a flower is blooming, but then there comes a stage when it starts to wilt. Do you blame the flower, or does the flower blame itself? Or should you then reflect onto the conditions surrounding the flower? Is it the soil that is rich enough to provide the nutrients? Is it the sunlight? Is it able to get the nutrients that it needs from the sunlight? Is it its surroundings, the environment, the air? So how do you explain that same analogy and what you mentioned about conditions in a person's life to do with resetting and getting out of that stage of burnout?
And I think it's such a useful analogy, because when you've got a stressful environment, or when you've got an environment that actually isn't where you ever wanted to be. And I'll bring my own story into this, because I think the flower analogy can be great for some circumstances. But I think in this society that we see today, we are so on like biohacking and optimization and understanding how we can track things and level things up. But the thing is, if you are in a job that you never wanted to be in, that doesn't align with the person that you are, and you have consistently over years and months neglected your true identity of who you are and instead gone for what you should do, or gone for the role that your parents would be proud of, or the university that looked good on paper, and you'd followed this line for so many years, and yet you get to the place where you should have quote unquote made it, and then you're feeling burnt out, you can optimize your sleep, you can change your nutrition, you can go and do a high rocks to give you meaning. But if underneath it's your purpose and your understanding of who you are that is lacking, that can be that within itself, that can be the thing that burns you out, because you've got one voice in your head saying this doesn't fit, I'm feeling this resistance, and then you've got another side of you that's almost like a mask that's saying no, this is who I should be. And when them two things rub together, that's when your capacity can be lowered, because you're starting to think, okay, I'm doing this, and it starts to feel overwhelming, and then you start questioning it in your mind. So that questioning in your mind then it's then related in your body, and how you then your heart rate might raise, you might start to feel a tightness in your chest. And actually that can be something that when you think of this flower, well, maybe that seed was trying to grow in the wrong environment altogether. So it could only grow so much. And actually maybe you just need to understand what environment is going to work for you. But we've never been told. We've just always gone along with what we should have done. And so we've planted ourselves in an environment that was never really ideal for us.
That makes sense. And I see already in today's world that that is what has happened in terms of placing ourselves in the wrong area, and we don't even realize it. And I want to pull up some statistics to validate what you've mentioned. So according to Forbes in 2025, 66% of American workers experience some form of burnout. 8 out of 10 workers are already at a risk of burnout. And burnout peaks around age 25, which already tells to me that an entire generation is closing to a state of burnout and overworking, or probably not realizing what is the right environment for them before they've even had the chance to start.
Yeah.
And that's baffling, especially in the way that we're going with today's age. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. And the last statistic before we go on to your story. The cost that this has to our global economy is sitting at $322 billion because of lost productivity, because we are either in the wrong environment, as you said, or in the wrong state, which we've not understood yet, and yet to dig deep, set our base right, and then come back as a better version of ourselves. But thank you for explaining that, Lucy. I want to understand, you've brought so much knowledge already, and we're not even halfway through the podcast. Help me understand. I know today you were in corporate. Something was stuck and something didn't feel right. You mentioned you've gone through the stage of burnout, and that's how we introduced this show. How did you realize it? And what makes you be here today? What is your journey from then?
So I always say that my journey through all of this started when I was 7 years old, and I got diagnosed with dyslexia. And I remember that day so well, and all of the experiences that I had from that point, I basically integrated this belief that I couldn't trust my own decisions, because I got moved schools, and then I got told you needed a tutor, and then I got told don't do the 11 plus because you won't get into the grammar schools. So it was always this like manufactured journey for me to try and do the best that I could, but don't do that because you might not be good enough for that, but we'll protect you from it, and all in the best way. Like, I had amazing people around me, I had amazing parents, but unfortunately the belief that I took on that I wasn't even aware of was along the lines of you're always going to struggle, you can't trust yourself, you're not smart enough, a collection of those things. So naturally I was like, I'm going to try really bloody hard here. So I got really good grades. I went to a really good university. I went to Leeds University doing geography, which I'm just like, if you had little Lucy sitting here who was 7 years old and I said, I'm going to go to university and do geography, she'd be like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Like, it was so far from who I was, but I already had this anxiety in my body. It's like, I've got to do it, because otherwise I'm not gonna do very well. Like, and then I just kind of got spat out of university, and it was like, right, okay, what am I gonna do now? So what did I do? I went and asked the people around me, what should I do? Again, rather than thinking for myself. And they said, you're really good at speaking to people, you should go into sales. And that's what I did. I went into sales, and my first job, I really enjoyed it, but it was very heavily on the client entertainment. This was pre-COVID, pre-wellness hype. I was going out 5 times a week, drinking with clients, staying out late, completely burning myself out physically just from the amount that I was doing. And then realized, okay, this probably isn't very sustainable. And I didn't realize this at the time, but I am a naturally confident person. And something that I talk about a lot is like, there's a difference between confidence and self-trust. And I think it doesn't get spoken enough. Like, people pair, confidence is self-trust. I don't think it is. I think they're very distinctive things, because I can come across very, very confident. I can seem like I know what I'm talking about, and it does not affect me being around people. But what used to happen is I could smash an interview, get a job, close a deal, be around senior stakeholders. But inside, someone would say something to me that was negative. My internal narrative was being eroded, because that was the story that I got told when I was younger. And that's what started to lead to my burnout, because I had a manager that really used to trigger that inner self-belief and self-trust that wasn't there. So over time, it was this downward spiral of me just completely losing myself, to the point where I couldn't look people in the eye anymore. I would go into work and literally look at the ground, and if I looked someone in the eye, I felt my heart beating really quickly. I'd have a lump in my throat. I then couldn't speak properly. And I was just like, how have I got to this? And of course, I blamed the job. I blamed that it was me. I obviously wasn't good enough to be here. And that, like, I started to believe the negative comments that this manager was telling me. And then I was just like, right, I just need to leave. And then I went and got help from a therapist that got me back to a place of, okay, I'm not having panic attacks anymore. I'm good. And everything started to get better from there. I went back into another role in a slightly different industry. And it was at the point where everyone started to really be like, oh, like, you're doing really well now. Like, I had a flat, I had a good group of friends. I got out of a bad relationship, and it was, I was like, what? I just knew I needed to do something. And at that point, I didn't know where to turn. And that's when I discovered coaching, and this idea that you could go and there's someone that can help you understand yourself and help you to move forward and help you to make change. And that was the catalyst to me then also becoming a coach, and further down the line, blending nervous system into that, which has led me to where I am today.
That's a beautiful story, Lucy. I must admit, I felt sad in the middle, the way you explained it. And I felt sad because I relate to many of your experiences that you mentioned, especially the one at the start. You mentioned that you were manufactured to what society told you to do. Those were your explicit words. And I'm thinking about something, the way I was raised in my society. And I want to touch base on this term that many might have come across, but not everybody, is the good girl syndrome. Is that what it is? Being manufactured and being molded based on what society expects you to do? What is the good girl syndrome?
Yeah, I think especially with women, and I think it's changing as well. I think our generation, we definitely suffered from this idea of the good girl syndrome, which I'll go into. But I think now, so my coaching company is called Blurred, and it's this idea that in today's society, nothing is really black and white. Everything is the way that we see culture, the way that social media, like we don't have decades that are really iconic anymore. Like fashion is very blended, music is very blended. How we see like male and female gender roles is very blended. Society and cultures are very blended. And I think that is confusing things even more, as we grew up with the good girl syndrome, because there is women in the world that we as a gender have been told you need to be kind, and you need to be polite, and you need to do what you do, like sit there and just look pretty and do what you've always done. But also at the same time, we want you to have a really good career, and we want you to like this feminism empowerment. And so I think we've got that side of things, but now we moved into the adult space as there's this other thing at play now with the rise of social media. We grew up being told that the world was this way, and now we have so much information at our fingertips. We're like, well, is it this way or is it this way? And it's leaving people so confused because they've followed a blueprint of being good, doing the right thing, getting the right career. And actually now, with all the things that are going on in the world, one, that's not paying off for a lot of people. And two, we've realized that actually that model is completely made up and discounted, but there isn't a replacement for it. Everything is changing and shifting at such a rate that this idea of being a good girl and doing all the things right, and that then being rewarded, is just not, it was never a thing, but now even more so. People are just realizing that actually that doesn't work for them. It doesn't bring them fulfillment or happiness, and it leaves them feeling more stuck than they might have been otherwise.
There are 4.5 million podcasts in the world, and only 8% of them are still going. I don't want to be that, and more importantly, I don't want you to miss what's coming. I want this show to give the space for conversation that aren't just useful for you, but for your friend who's about to get passed over for a promotion and won't understand why, for the sibling who's going to make their first big career move and is terrified, and for the partner who's going to want to take a leap one day but won't have anyone around them who's actually done it. In every episode between me and my guest, we won't wrap up until we've turned it into something you can walk away with and actually use. That is a promise I am making to you from day one. All I ask is one tap. Subscribe right now, because as this grows and as the guests get bigger and the conversations get deeper, I want you to have been there from the beginning, and I want you to be the person who says that they found this early. This show is going to make it, and I want you with me from day one. Hit subscribe, and I will see you next time. But with AI coming into the picture, it feels like there's a good girl syndrome in a little bit of everybody and all genders.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to know your thoughts on that, especially with what you call this specific generation that has gone through the good girl syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Gen Z?
So I would say millennials were the main culprits of good girl syndrome. It was the rise of females having more freedom, having more choice, having more autonomy. But also we still have this idea of what good looks like as a woman. We still need to be presentable. We still need to be polite. We shouldn't be too loud. And there's a theory and a school of thought that I talk about a lot called shadow work. And this goes back to the confident girls out there, the girls that they are the good girl, but they've also got that spark. And they may have been told when they were younger, oh, don't be too much, don't be loud, don't be a bossy boots, don't be don't be bossy, I think or don't be too demanding. And so that element of us, that spark, gets reduced. And when we're younger, we put that aspect of ourselves, that fire, into the bad box. And so how that then relates to us going through the motions is now we don't just see our peers around us, we see everyone online. We can see someone in a completely different country showing up online and being whoever they want to be. So we start to think, oh, well, they can do that. But how that might show up if we have integrated that as bad is it might come up as judgmental. And this is actually what happened to me. I started to see people online and I started to judge them. This was quite a while ago. I started to judge people and think, why do they think that they can just talk, like do whatever they want on social media? And when I dug into it, that was because there was this part of me that was told, don't be too much when I was younger. And actually, when we can reintegrate that within ourselves, we can get this power back and we can get this feeling of wholeness within us, which allows us to really thrive rather than just survive. And it allows us to break out of them societal constructs and really start to lean into who we truly are.
Help the people who are following through with you verbally, but also want to see this framework to understand it more visually how it works. Mm-hmm. Because what I definitely could pick up from this conversation, and mind me, maybe I'm slow at following things, but there's a bottom-up approach to this that you're taking while looking at your inner state to move from that subconscious to conscious state, and not only reflecting what's inward, but also understanding what they need to have or understand from outside them to be able to reach that potential. So I'm going to give you my iPad. And if you can, please explain this to anybody else who would be watching this video.
Okay, so I take a top-down and bottom-up approach. So what does that mean? So bottom-up means if we've got a person here, my awful stick man. Bottom up is looking at the body and how that affects the mind. So we have 3 energy centers within the body. So we have the head, the heart, and the gut. And this is what a lot of people miss out is people think that our mind is just in silo to everything else in our body and that dictates everything that's going on in our body, and it's completely wrong. There's actually more information being sent from our gut to our brain and our heart to our brain than there is from our brain to the other organs in our body. And so that means, and let's take an example of someone that might come to me. If someone is coming to me feeling like they're burnt out, they don't know if they don't know what they want to do anymore, and they're feeling really, really stuck, we need to address this first, because if your gut and your heart are going to be sending signals of stress and dissatisfaction and anxiety to your brain, for you to just go, right, okay, I'm just going to change my career now, the amount of thoughts that you're going to have access to not just have the idea on, but to then follow through on, is going to be a lot harder. So we need to look at the nervous system, which then has a direct impact on your heart and your gut, so that you can start connecting the mind and body together, and so that the signals that are being sent from your body are allowing the brain to optimize and have increased capacity to hold different amounts of creativity, different things of what they think is possible. Say, for example, if you are a mum of 2 and you've got a job, you're working, like you've got 2 kids, your life is really, really busy, and you just say, right, you're going to do this thing now, and you're not going to have any other context of how you're going to do it, they're probably going to be like, I don't have time for that. But if you get someone in a space where you help them to calm their body, down-regulate their nervous system, and then sit with them, they're probably going to start to think about, oh, actually, I have Thursday afternoons to myself. I can do something there. So that's why that is a really important place to start. Once we do that, we can then take the top down approach, which is mindset. So that is then, once you are in a space where you can start to think more clearly, you can then start to understand and start to get a bit more space on the actual thoughts that are coming up. So what is the fear? Where do you feel that in your body? Now you've got more of that mind-body connection. And how can you reframe that in a way that allows your body to actually move through it, rather than just the force of thinking your way out of it? And I think that's where so many people get stuck with mindset, is we hear all of these things like affirmations and just do it, just push through, like it's all about habits. And they're all true, but you need to do them in the right environment. Your body needs to be in the right environment in order to really take them things on board. Because if they don't, you'll think the thought, but your body will just your body won't attach to it. And so that's when you start to feel this resistance, and that's when people start to get repeating patterns. So what my framework does, the embodied change framework, is it goes from the subconscious level. So the first level is releasing resistance. So that's understanding, okay, how can we start to use the breath to activate different thoughts, different feelings, and different sensations within the body? Then how can we look at ego, shadow, which I mentioned earlier, and self-sabotage as these invisible patterns that we might be operating at on different levels? So that's releasing resistance. The next one is the inner compass. So this is really looking at core values, the who am I question, and really starting to establish language around that. Because my most hated question is, what do you do? It's what's your name and what do you do? And that's how we identify ourselves. And we're so much more than just letters on a page and a job role and a job title.
Because that's what most of us usually say. What do you do? I'm XXX, working at XXY.
Yeah. But if you're feeling stuck and you can only identify yourself as a job role, and that's what you want to change, that's going to be really hard for you to let go of that. So when we can start to understand that we're more than that, that's again, when we're doing that alongside nervous system regulation, that's when you start to get these ideas and this creativity come to you about what could be possible. The next level is a script shift. So this is really about now, seeing the story, seeing the actual patterns play out, and then understanding the exact reframe in your mind that you need to change that. The next one is the awareness radar. So this is about starting to come into conscious awareness now. So the actual skills that you're going to need to do in day to day to actually start implementing this work that you've done. And how can you start creating that as a habit, coming back to yourself, building self-trust and building really authentic confidence. And then the final one is, this is going more into strategy, which is mapping misalignment. So this is really focused on boundaries and conversations, because there is so many people that I have worked with that the only reason they're stuck in what they're doing is because they're too afraid to have a difficult conversation. So when you can build that authentic confidence from the inside out, approaching them difficult conversations can feel so much more achievable. And I guarantee when anyone runs through that, they will then have more clarity on what their options are, the confidence to take the next step, and the calm and the capacity to be able to maintain that.
I have a lot of respect for you, Lucy, and the work that you and many other people in this space do, because you're not only having one session to be able to understand and help a person. By the way you explained your framework, it sounds that it is a long journey that you have to go with them through and untap or tap into parts of them that they don't even know yet that exist, very, very deep down. And I understand and I recognize that this is a process to be able to change an individual from the inside out. So one identity, physical being, but going through stages and states of realization and reflection that essentially changes their entire script of life. And I have a question for you, for somebody who does not have the privilege yet of being able to tap into somebody like yourself, for whatever reason it might be, or does not know yet that they need to do something like this. Let's take a simulation of somebody in their mid-20s who's working in a company right now, who is burned out because of their workload and obviously going through their own identity crisis, because that is the age and stage. And also AI does not make it easier for them, and the shifts of work is not making it easier for them. They have had multiple meetings in the morning, and in the PM, they might be onto one of their biggest projects where they have to present in that due meeting that can make or break their career. They don't have this time of going through the process that you have mentioned yet. And again, maybe they don't even realize it yet. But if someone of that personality or going through that right now is listening to this, what would you recommend as something that they can do maybe in that block before that meeting that they have, to be able to tap into an awareness state to go as their best version, or at least a better version?
Okay, so you're talking about confidence to be able to present or show up in a high pressure situation.
Confidence and awareness of where they are and what they have to do to be able to push ahead.
Okay, so this is going to be short, sharp, and fast.
Yes.
I would say we want to be focusing on getting the body into a place of calm. We don't want to be entering the situation with our nervous system already heightened, because when you step into that high pressure situation, the adrenaline's going to kick in. You're going to naturally start to increase your heart rate's going to naturally start to increase anyway. So you want to be able to bring the heart rate down and really feel grounded and present before you go into that situation. And what you want to do in this is to down-regulate the nervous system. You want to be focusing on an extended exhale. So you want to do maybe 4 in, 1 up, and then 7 out. So
I feel my heart is pumping less fast.
literally in them 3 breaths, you can already feel, I can feel it in my body as well. Like, you can tell we've sat down and we've been on it, and our heart rate has started to pump and the adrenaline has started to flow. And all you need to do is a few of them breaths and you will feel a shift. But the way I describe this is your nervous system and your breath is the equivalent of going to the gym. If you are going to the gym once a month, don't expect to be coming out with washboard abs. Like, that's just not going to happen. And when you go to the gym, you might not be able to touch your toes. You might not be able to lift heavy weights, but over time, your flexibility might increase. And because your flexibility is now increased, you can use more of the machines in the gym. So that makes you enjoy the gym more. And now your flexibility is increased, you can now start to focus on strength and building that. And I want you to think the same as breath work. If you're going to do breath work only when you're feeling overwhelmed, you are not going to feel the long-term benefits that it can give to your nervous system and building the capacity in the moments that matter. When we breathe, and the most hilarious thing happened the other day. I went back home and my dad, bless him, he is quite averse to all of this breathwork stuff. And he calls it breathwork stuff. And I said, okay, Dad, let's breathe into your belly, because breathing deep into the belly, that activates the parasympathetic nervous system. And if you think of babies, when you see them sleeping, their bellies go in and out. But a sign of dysregulated breathing is people can't breathe into their belly. And I was going, breathe into your belly. We're going. And he physically couldn't breathe into his belly.
We forget to breathe.
Yeah. And
It's like when we're writing emails as well, we forget to breathe.
Yeah. And you want to think of that as the flexibility of your nervous system. And so if you can't breathe or take a full breath, that is going to affect how you really appreciate and understand and have the capacity to be in different situations. Just like someone that can't touch their toes and use certain machines in the gym, they're not going to enjoy the gym as much. So if you can only breathe and have short, shallow breaths, that's going to affect how you show up into that situation. So if we can learn to expand our breath and take more full breaths, that's going to start to increase our ability to have flexibility within the nervous system. We can then start to build it. So we can then start to build strength within the nervous system through other practices. You put the two together, you have a flexible nervous system that is also very strong, and that's going to affect how you then show up to situations, how you then sit in a stressful situation, and how you're actually feeling in that moment, and your ability. Because if we think about it with the mind and the body linking together, if your body is like, I can handle this stress, like my heart's not beating, I'm not holding my breath, I haven't got a lump in my throat, then your mind's going to start saying, I can do this, I can handle this, give me the next thing. But if your heart is beating at 1,000,000 miles an hour, but you're just sheerly trying to like push through with thought, that's when burnout starts to kick in, because you're not listening to the cues of your body. And over time, that's when you start to move into freeze.
Speaking of not burnout, as we've already covered that before, but speaking of being able to take care of yourself and actually taking care of yourself, following one of the biggest hacks that you've given, if you are short on time, but any person listening right now, when they do have more than a moment to actually take the help of someone like yourself to help them guide into what they need to untap, if they want to go ahead to the next chapter, and whether they even fit into the environment that they belong in, how do they make themselves molded as part of that. I want to touch into something that I personally have never seen before on social media or covered as a topic, but I think is relevant in today's conversation very, very much. It's about the space that you're in and the space that we're all encouraged to be integrated in, and that's how do we take care of ourselves, our mind and our body, and in the world that we call wellness, but also another contradicting world which is creeping up to us fast and quick, that is the merge of AI. And here I'm going to do a quick short round, which I call in this segment, no filters. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to share with you 3 statements, and I want you to either say you agree, mm-hmm. disagree, or it's complicated, mm-hmm. just like a relationship probably. And a quick short sentence as to why. Are you ready, Lucy?
Yeah, the quick and short, I'm not so sure on, but let's give it a go.
The first thing that comes on your mind, agree, disagree, or it's complicated. The first one, AI wellness apps will replace human coaches within 10 years.
Disagree.
Why?
I think there'll be a place for them. And it's about how do you work, like anything in AI, how can we work to amplify the work that coaches do? But we are humans speaking to humans. And a lot of the problems that we see within different people is to do with disconnection from ourselves, disconnection from community, from society, not feeling like we fit in. So if we're going to default to then using a computer to help us, that's only amplifying that problem more. So humans need to speak to humans, because that can be half of the thing. If someone speaks to someone that they feel like they are listening to them and they are heard, then that solves part of the problem. It also helps with nervous system regulation, because co-regulating is something that helps symptoms like burnout, being able to feel held and feel heard and feel seen by other humans. That is really, really key. So I think, yes, AI is going to be a great tool for fast frameworks, fast questions, helping people to think a bit more broadly. But should it replace, and will it replace humans? I don't think completely. And I don't think it should.
I agree with you on that, but I would disagree too. My concern is always coming from the place that probably AI is getting good at understanding our nervous system, which should not be, because at the end of the day, they're still not human.
Exactly.
The second one. According to some people, maybe, breathwork is just meditation rebranded for people who won't admit they need to slow down.
Disagree.
Why?
Okay, so meditation and breathwork are different. So when we meditate, we sit in stillness and we might focus on the breath, but the intention isn't to just focus on the breath. It's also to notice the thoughts in your mind, to bring awareness to different places in your body. And the reason why that is hard for high performing people is because they don't feel their body. They don't feel the state that they're in because they're so in their head. So their head, a thought will come up being like, this isn't working. They'll attach onto that thought and they'll just stop. Breath work is using the breath to change your state, and it's bringing sensation into the body, which then allows the speed of the thoughts to slow down. And that's why a lot of high performing people really like breath work, because they really struggle to get out of their head. Their head is what has made them successful. Their head is what has helped them to get to a place where, you know, they may have been done over by someone in a business deal. So that makes that alert system even louder. But when they can start to tap into the different parts of their body, it allows them to really feel into that and for the thoughts to slow down. And I do think it is more for people that can't slow down, but I think it's a tool to get people into meditation because it puts them then into a more meditative state.
Loud and clear. And lastly, are we more disconnected by being connected on social media?
Yes, I think we are.
So agree.
I think people will say that, like, have all of the arguments against it. I think it can be a way to help people find community, but take social media away from that, which still, you could go onto Google and you could find that. I think it's taken away, it takes away people's attention. It takes away people's ability. Like, I remember growing up and people just used to call you whenever. But now there's this like culturally unsaid thing that you can't just call someone. Like, you
text
can't.
Me first.
Yeah, text me. It's almost rude to just call someone. But people just used to call you back in the day and it used to be fine. And when you have a phone call, that's so much more connecting than just a text. So I think that social media is not going anywhere. We need to use it as for people's businesses. I think there's so many pros to it, but is it making us more connected? I think essentially, no, it's not, even though we all need to do it if you've got a business.
It's scary what the statistics say on this. Is because according to Spring Health 2026, AI has worsened mental health through information overload for 24% of employees. And that does not say at all that we are connected more as a society. It reduces our sense of control over our own future for 23% and worsened job or work-life stress for 19%. And that itself is a concerning thing, that social media is supposed to bring us together. But in some ways, it is making us more overloaded and more away and separated as human beings. We're coming to the close, Lucy. And I want to put one question to you. You've mentioned a lot about your story from when you started and when you got diagnosed with dyslexia from 7. You've mentioned about how you were manufactured into society's requirements out of what you needed to be. You mentioned about how you went through your own journey in corporate, realizing that probably you were at the best stage in your career, but not the best stage aligned to yourself, and how you broke away from it and started something more aligned and attuned to your future and self-being and helping others get to the journey. So I have a question for you, and this is going to be the most important one. If you had your 14-year self, not your 7-year self, which you were saying was sitting there and seeing you go ahead with geography. If you had your 14-year self next to you, what would be the message that you would give to her if she was looking at you right now?
Don't listen to what people want for you. You know what you want. You know who you are. You're at this point where you're letting that start to drift away because of the things that are distracting you. You can like what you want to like, and no one can tell you that, and follow that, and you can't go far wrong from that.
That's a beautiful one, because sometimes a lot of our passions and dreams are innately connected to who we are as children. And lastly, for the people listening to you before we close, what is the one message that you want to give them? And what is the one tool or tip or framework that you want to leave them with before we wrap up?
So for anyone that is at a point where they're either feeling stuck or like they've plateaued in some area of their life, whether that's work, whether that's stage of life, and they're questioning things without having really any direction of where to go. Number one, start to slow down first. Take some time for yourself, whether that's a weekend, a couple of evenings. Really schedule that time and break it away from what you usually do. Stop putting everything in your diary so you have no time for yourself. Make time for yourself, because you need that time to think clearly. The second thing is, if you're pushing in every area of your life, how can you find areas of your life to pull back in? Whether that be the type of workouts that you do. Like, not every workout has to be this aggressive, hard workout. Maybe can you lean into more yoga or more Pilates or meditation, or things that slow you down to then start to tell your mind and body that you're safe. And the third thing is, when you take this time for yourself, just start to explore yourself rather than trying to fix a problem. Because when you explore yourself, things start to open up in ways that you don't even realize. And that creates curiosity and fun back into it, which is probably one of the things that you're missing.
I summarize it into 4, what you've mentioned. Reflect, be aware, be attuned, and explore. Am I right to summarize it as these 4 things that someone can take away? Lucy, this has been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. I personally have got so many nuggets from our conversation that I will take away into my own reflection, because I definitely have the good girl syndrome.
Yeah.
But I hope that there's someone that can also take at least one thing, because there's so many nuggets packed today. So I only have to thank you for your time and for the value that you've provided for everybody. And we'll see everybody in the next episode.